Father, we thank you this morning for receptive hearts, receptive minds. We release Christian this morning, Father, to release the anointing that's upon his life to impart to these children and these leaders that are here today. And we thank you for the gift that's upon him. We thank you that he's a blessing to not just us, the kids, but a blessing to the nations of this world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Let's pray before we begin. Lord, I thank you for this time that we have to learn about you and your word. Lord, I thank you that every one of these words will pierce straight into every one of our hearts, Lord. I thank you that your anointing will fill this house. In Jesus' name, amen. So the title of today's message is Obedience Brings Blessing. So if you're taking notes, I'll write that down. Now, what is obedience? Obviously, that's the first thing. So, obedience is doing God's will instead of our own, letting his rise and ours fade away. Now, we all know that this can be extremely difficult. Stick with it, it gets better. Now, if we look anywhere in the Bible that it talks about God telling someone to do something and that person obeys, they get abundantly blessed, right? So let's take a look at Genesis 12 verse 1. If you have your Bibles, turn over to Genesis 12 verse 1. And it reads, Now the Lord had said to Abraham, Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. And in you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Now we see here that Abraham receives a promise. And this promise is set in course to take place many years later in God's perfect timing. But if Abraham never took that first step in having faith and being obedient, then these promises would not have come true later on. Now, if we look at Genesis 20, verse 24, a little bit later in Abraham's life, the only Bible can turn to Genesis 20, verse 24. And it reads, Then Abimelech took sheep, oxen, male and female servants, and gave them to Abraham. He restored Sarah his wife to him, and Abimelech said, See, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. Now, if you read a little bit before this, you'll understand that Abimelech is a pretty powerful man. In fact, he's a king. So Abraham was afraid that Abimelech was going to kill him and take Sarah as his own. Now, the God that Abraham was afraid of is offering his sheep, his oxen, his land, his servants. This is called blessing. But why? Because he was obedient to leave his father's house. Now, Abraham's obedience doesn't stop there, meaning his blessings don't either. Now, if we look at Genesis 22, 1 through 2, you don't have to turn there. It talks about God blessing Abraham and obviously testing Abraham to sacrifice his son. Now, it was kind of like when he told Abraham to go and sacrifice Isaac, which was his only son, or his only son from Sarah. Now, when he was about to kill his son, he was very obedient. And he was about to kill his son when God told him not to, right? And told him that it was a test and provided him sacrifice. But the thing that really stands out is he said, when Isaac asked him, Where's the sacrifice? He said, The Lord will provide. Now, he's not saying this because obviously you can't tell Isaac, You have a sacrifice. Otherwise he'll get super scared. But he's telling him that the Lord will provide. He's genuinely believing that the Lord will provide a new sacrifice. He is so obedient, yet he is so faithful. And that's the next thing, guys. Faith works with obedience. If you're taking notes, right, faith works with obedience. Now, he knows that God will keep his promise about his descendants, right? He said, I will make in you all nations great. So he says, the Lord says in Isaiah 55 verse 11, if you have your Bibles, you can turn to Isaiah 55 verse 11. It reads, So shall my word be that goes from my mouth, it shall not return to me void, but it shall accomplish what I please, and it shall prosper in the thing for which I have sent it. This is why we can always count on God's word. Because whenever he think or feel, it will prevail. Right? So, it will always come to pass. Now, this is why the enemy is always telling us, you can't do that, or this is impossible. And then we always depend on God, and then these things happen when we lean on God. But there is a way that the enemy can stop us from receiving what God has said. And that is by making us stop believing what God has said. So, if we are in a situation where God has told us something, and Satan comes to us and he keeps throwing problems and saying this isn't going to happen, we need to make a decision if we're going to either be with Jesus and depend on what God said, or we're going to fall away and say there's no ways. Because as soon as you do that, then it crumbles. And the promise, which God's already spoken into being, you step out of the blessing. The promise will still happen, but you are stepping out of the blessing. So the promise is no longer attached to you, but someone else. Now, if we turn our Bibles over to, for the Bible says, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, give you hope in the future. Paraphrasing. Now, this is how we can always depend on God, because God has never had a single bad thing that He wants to happen to us. Every time something bad has happened to a person, it's not God's will. That is us stepping out of His will. So He says, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you hope and a future, not happiness. Okay, paraphrasing again. We need to believe God, and we need to step into His will. When we step into His will, we experience His will, a place where we are made to live. Now, if we turn over our Bibles to the book of Job, you don't actually have to though. It talks about God testing Job, and obviously you know Job is in a very hard position when this book starts. But the thing is, he was in a very different covenant, right? So he was in a very different time with God. So back then there was no Jesus. Well, at least Jesus had died for us. So therefore no one then was perfect. They all made mistakes, had to burn sacrifices, everything like that. But the upright were protected by God. And Job wasn't upright. So God is very fond of Job and often bragged about him. Now our example takes place when Satan went up to heaven and mocked God, saying all of your people would flee if they didn't believe you. And God said, no. My servant Job is perfect, upright, awesome. And so basically, Job was like amazing, right? In the eyes of God. He was proud of Job. Now, the devil said, okay, well, let me go down, do my worst to Job, and we'll see. So he has a bet with God, which is really stupid because God is all-knowing. But nevertheless, he went down and did his worst to Job because God said you're not allowed to kill Job. So he did that, but Job stayed faithful, just like God said. But there were a few places where God kind of had to go down and remind him that I'm always with you. But nevertheless, he always stayed faithful. So this teaches us that no matter what we think or we feel, we always have to obey God, because God's will always prevail. Now, a simple example to this is in Luke 5:4-6. If you have your Bibles, turn to Luke 5:4-6. And it reads, when he had stopped speaking, he said to Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your net for a catch. But Simon answered him, saying, Master, we have toiled all night and have caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. And when he had done this, he had caught a great number of fish, and the nets began to break. So this teaches us that even if we don't understand God's will, we must always obey it, right? Now, something that's really awesome about this is it wasn't in just Jesus showing his power, but it was rather Jesus telling him to cast it on the other side. The other side was mind. And when he had obeyed God, he had caught a great number of fish. He never knew that he was going to catch anything, but he was obedient to his authority. Jesus was an authority back then, right? He had a huge amount of authority. Hence the reason why they all called him master. So he knew that he might not catch anything, but I must still obey my authority. And when he did that, then he caught a great number of fish. Now, we know that huge amounts of blessings comes when we are obedient, right? What happens when we are disobedient? Okay, this is where stuff starts to get hectic. If we turn over to Ezekiel 5:7-9, Ezekiel 5:7-9, it says, "Therefore, thus saith the Lord God, because you have multiplied disobedience more than the nations that are around you, you have not walked in my statutes, nor kept in my judgment, nor done according to the judgment of the nations that are all around you. Therefore, thus saith the Lord, indeed, even I am against you, and I will execute judgment in the midst of the sight of the nations. And I will do among you what I have never done, and of the likes of which I will never do again, because of all your abominations." If you read on a little bit later, which you can read on time, it just talks about how they're going to die, what their time is. Now, a lot of us are probably thinking, well, I'm glad I'm not in that time. The thing is, God's judgment never changes. It's today. He's the same today, tomorrow, and forever, right? So, when people think that there's a difference, there isn't. The only difference, the major difference, is we have Jesus, right? So we can pray for God to have mercy on other people, and we can, don't have to lie to sacrifice every time we mess up. The only way to stop this sin and this problems, because every time we do something disobedient, it always has a cost. So the only thing we can do is to repent. And how do we repent? We change ourselves. And not for a little bit of time, but forever, right? So, we just see how costly disobedience is, and how it's seriously such a terrible thing. If we turn over to Romans 12:1-2, it talks about the renewing of our mind. We'll read it a little bit later. But obviously we don't want to be disobedient. So let's take a look at what the Bible says about how to be obedient. So here in Romans 12:1-2, it says, "I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service, and do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that it may prove what is good and acceptable and perfect will of God." This is the backbone of how to be obedient. This is the main scripture here. It tells us that we have to spend time in the Word, because the Word is the only way we can transform and renew our minds. Now, I've seen this with many people, and obviously with myself. Whenever I would spend time having a daily dosage of the Word, spending time in the Word daily, I could feel my spirit grow stronger and stronger and stronger. And I become like Jesus in the way of how we were intended to live. But as soon as I stepped out of that daily time in the Word, then I could feel my spirit grow weaker and my flesh grow stronger and stronger and take control. And I go back into the old sinful ways. But when I came back into that daily dosage, it repeated, and I became better and better in the way of which we were intended to live. So this is another example of how we have to stay connected in the Word. We have to stay continuously reading the Word. Now, another way to be obedient is honoring our parents. Now, you can write this down. Obviously, honoring your parents is the next point here. In Ephesians 6:1-3, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honoring your mother and your father, for this is the first commandment of the promise, that you may be well, it may be well with you, and you may live long on the earth." Now, being honest, this is something that I'm still working on my life. And I'm sure a lot of you are too. Now, something really awesome about this is it says honoring. Does anyone here know what honoring means? Okay, so honoring means not only to be obedient, but to also have a good attitude towards what we have been asked to do. So when our parents or God tells us to do something, we have to do it while having honor. Well, so how many of us know that times have been when we've been asked to do something, but we really didn't feel like it, or we really didn't want to? We get all, do we have to do it now? And this brings us straight to our next point. If you're taking notes, right? Delayed obedience is disobedience. Okay? Delayed obedience is disobedience. He knows when we must do stuff, how we must do it, and what to do, right? So we can't expect God to ask for our opinion, because He's not. He's telling us to do it, and when He tells us to do it, we have to do it. So delayed obedience is disobedience. Now, what is another way to be obedient? Don't be prideful. Now, I struggled with this, obviously, when I was really young. I used to always be prideful, right? And I would be like, look what I did, or something like that. Or I'd brag about my sister or my brother, which is impressive, but anyway. So, when I did these things, it was causing seeds of pride, right? And obviously that means that I became prideful, and that is stepping away from what God has told me to do. Now, did you know that the first sin was being prideful? The first ever sin was being prideful. When Lucifer, which is Satan when he was in heaven, right? When he was in heaven, the first thing he ever did was be prideful. He was the worship leader. I don't know if any of you knew that. He was the worship leader, basically. So, when he was on that stage, directing all the worship of the angels to God, what he did was he said, can I just take a little bit of this power? And as he did that, his pride took control of him, and he fell from heaven. You know the phrase, pride comes before the downfall? Any of you know that? Well, that actually is about the devil. He was the one that made that phrase because pride came before the downfall, literally fell downwards. So, how do we not be prideful? Well, obviously in Proverbs it tells us all about pride. And in Proverbs 11 verse 2 it says, when pride comes, then comes shame, but the humble is wisdom. God never intended us to be prideful. He always intended us to be humble and wise. He never wanted us to have shame. So we need to remember that we must never take credit for something God has done in our lives. It was never us, it was always God. So, what is another way of being obedient? Finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. Write that down to take notes. Finding out what is acceptable to the Lord. Now, in Ephesians 5:10 through 11, it says, finding out what is acceptable to the Lord, and have no fellowship with unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. Finding out what is acceptable to the Lord and having nothing to do with evil. It's another way for us to be obedient to God. So, how do we do this? Well, many people are always saying, so do I go like, is this sin or can I do it? And that is literally like saying, how close can I get to a hole without falling into it? Because your heart is showing what you want to do, and then you realize that it's actually not what you should be doing. The thing you should be asking yourself is this going to better my walk with Christ? Because you'll find that a lukewarm or one that is not spiritual, a Christian, right? What they do is they say, is this sin or can I do it? Is this sin or can I do it? And it shows the true heart, right? But a spirit-filled, set on fire Christian will say, how close can I get to God so I can be as far away from that sin as possible? So it is so important for us to remember that when we walk in our lives, we have the Holy Spirit. He is our helper. So He will spot out and point things out to us. And we know deep inside what is good and what is wrong. So we need to find out what is acceptable to the Lord and will it better my walk with Christ. Now, another way is spending time praying in tongues. Now, in Proverbs 18 verse 21 it says, death and life are the power of the tongue, and those who eat it will love, those who love it will eat its fruit. Now, there are 3 reasons. If you're taking notes, write them down. 1, there is so much power in our tongues. 1, there is so much power in our tongues. Number 2, when we pray in tongues, we are confessing God's perfect will over our lives. Number 2, when we pray in tongues, we are confessing God's perfect will over our lives. Finally, number 3, if we don't spend time praying in tongues and praying God's perfect will over life, then it is so easy for us to drift astray from what God has wanted us to do. So if we just summarize that, it's if we don't spend time praying God's perfect will over our lives, that is so very easy for us to drift astray. So we have been given the ultimate weapon, and that is praying in tongues. Whenever we pray in tongues, we don't have to think, is this or is this not, right? Because we find out it's acceptable to the Lord, and then we pray in tongues. Because praying in tongues is basically confessing, like we said, it's confessing God's perfect will over your life. So it's so important, guys, to pray in tongues. Extremely important. We have to do it more and more every day. And I know it's going to be hard. Sometimes I forget, and then I realize, oh, heavens, what's happening here? You know, but as soon as you pray in tongues, then it kind of like does this whole build in your life, and you just become stronger and stronger. And like Jonathan Schultz said, that if you pray every day in tongues, you pray an hour in tongues every single day, you will not drift off. And that is why, if we don't spend time praying in tongues, it is so easy for us to drift astray. So guys, it is so important for us to do that. Now, we've looked at many scriptures on saying, or like 4, but we've looked at many scriptures saying how we have to be obedient to God. And we've looked at others, which are what comes from being obedient to God, right? Which is a huge amount of blessing. Now, I know that sometimes it can be extremely difficult to obey God and to do His will. But it is something that I will always want to do. And no matter what, I will always try to do it. Now, if you want to make a decision to be obedient, maybe you've just struggled or you haven't been very obedient to God lately, then I invite you to stand and pray a prayer with me. So if you haven't been very obedient to God or you've been struggling, then I invite you now to stand and make a prayer with me.
Come on, stand. Stand, guys, if you haven't been obedient, like you said.
Now, something that we have to remember is this is an everyday prayer. You don't have to stand if you don't really want to, because I know this is reaching, and it is hard for us to stand. But the thing is, when we stand, we're making a decision. You don't have to go, okay, yeah? When you stand, or now, when you decide to be obedient to God, what's happening is you're making a continuous covenant with God. There isn't 2 days, 3 days, 4 days of obedience. It's continuous walk of being obedient. Now, if you have never given your life to Jesus, obviously that's your first step, right? So, if you've never given your life to Jesus, then that is the first step in being obedient. You can't be obedient if you don't have a master to be obedient to. So, if you want to give your life to Jesus now, I invite you to stand. Okay? Now, everyone, can you please close your eyes? There we are. Okay, let's pray. Lord, I'm sorry for every sin I've done, for being disrespectful. Lord, help me to never again lose my temper, to never again say things that I know I shouldn't have. God, I ask you to forgive me, to wash away all my sins, to make me whole again. Lord, come into my life. Forgive me. Wash away every one of my sins. I make a decision. Follow you. To be obedient to your commands. Lord, I know that I am saved. Amen.